Hello everyone, and welcome to RPG DIY, your channel for all things tabletop gaming. So today I'm going to take a look at this box that was sent to me by Troll Lord Games. This is their Gaming Club bundle. This is a starter set for Castles and Crusades. And if you have a gaming group in some sort of official capacity, usually through, say, Boys and Girls Club or your work or some company, they will send you this for free. And that's what they did. They sent this to me. This is the only compensation I've received. And not only do you get the hard copies of the books, you get the PDF files as well, which is really helpful. So we're going to do an unboxing. I'm going to take a look and see what they sent me and give you my thoughts. So let's get started. All right, let's see what's in this. Okay. All right, so to start with, we have the Castles and Crusades Player's Handbook. Makes sense? Oh, and we have a second copy, which actually makes a lot of sense. If you have a gaming group, it's much better to have more than one copy of a player's guide for everybody to look at instead of having to share all the time, because, you know, sharing isn't great sometimes. All right, and a third copy of the Player's Handbook. Okay, nice. All right, looks like a keeper's screen with pertinent information. You have meals and lodging, combat, random names, which is always helpful. Adventure, so you've got turning undead, time, unarmed combat. Words are hard. Saving throws, movement, and weather. That's very cool. And what's the artwork look like? So we have. Okay. This is the cover of the most recent printing of the Castle Keeper's Guide. And this is the back of the Player's Handbook. This is the cover of the Player's Handbook. Very cool. And I'm not sure what that one is. We'll look and see. Okay, all right, they have an adventure, open and play. So, Shadows of the Green Sky. Open and play includes all the basic rules for a fun-filled evening of Castles and Crusades. No other books are required. So you could actually just start with this with new players to get them familiar with how it works. And it looks like we have some pre-generated characters already in here for you. Very cool. And a Castle Keeper's Guide. Now, interesting. So, like I said before, the latest printing of the Castle Keeper's Guide has the Afridi on the front like that. And this has not that. So, let's see what printing this one is. So, this is 2021, and the latest printing is 2024. So, this is the third printing. That is why it has a different cover. Whereas, Monsters and Treasure. So the Monsters and Treasure, for instance, is also a 2024, the sixth printing. All right, and that's all in the box. So what this means is, so these two books, the Players and the Monsters, are all the most recent printing. And one way to tell is this is Castles and Crusades Reforged, It has this seal right here, you can see. This little seal right there, showing that they've removed all the OGL references, the 5th edition OGL. And it looks like this particular Castle Keeper's Guide still has some of the OGL stuff in it, which is fine. One thing about Castles and Crusades is, unlike other games, they don't have editions. They don't have a 2nd or 3rd edition or 5th edition. They have printings. The rules pretty much stay the same in all their books, from the first printing all the way up to, let's see, this player's handbook. It is the 10th printing. But the rules have not changed. What they change in the variable printings is they catch more of the spelling errors. They clean up some clunky language. They restate something so it's a little clearer, and I've noticed that between editions. And so I'm not sure why they didn't send the latest edition of the Castle Keeper's Guide, but because the rules don't change, you can use any of the printings all the way, and they'll all mix together. They're all the same rules. Like I said before, this latest printing, the reforged, just doesn't have any OGL material, and that's fine. But since you do get the PDFs for everything in this box as well, I looked at mine, and the Castle Keeper's Guide is the latest printing that has the Ifriti cover. Now, one thing I also would like you to notice is all you old schoolers who played first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the first hardback book, again, words are hard, hardback books that had the kind of cartoony covers on them, especially the Monster Manual, that if this were the recent Castle Keeper's Guide, they each reflect, these covers reflect the original first edition Advanced covers. And it's pretty obvious because you have people deciding what to do here. You've got the thieves up here trying to get the gemstone out of the eye, the Ifriti attacking like on the DMG, and Monsters and Treasures, probably the most obvious because of the way they did the front cover. You got the troll, the owlbear, the roper, centaur, Pegasus, red dragon. And so they're all homages to first edition. And the reason being is that after Gary Gygax left the company that he started, and he started working with Troll Lord Games. And this is basically his game, another one he wrote after Dungeons and Dragons. And it's called Castles and Crusades because that was the name of his gaming group. And so he named it after that. And so this is a nice homage to him and what he and Dave Arneson created. Okay, let's do a quick look through on all the books. So the Player's Handbook. And I'm not going to go in a deep dive or anything, but I'm going to just kind of go through and see how the printing looks. What's really nice is the pages have kind of a marbleized background, but it does not interfere with the type. You can read it very, very clearly. The pages have kind of color coding that you can see here for each section. So when you flip it open, so just basically the RPG, and then it has the classes, because starting your character starts right away. On page 12, creating your character. Now, one thing that this has, again, this is pretty much an homage to first edition. That's been cleaned up a lot because first edition rules originally were really hard to read for anybody who's done that. But you have Barbarian, Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Illusionist, Knight, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Wizard, and Assassin. Just like first edition rules, the Assassin was its own class, not a subset of the Rogue like in later editions. The attributes are the same, but in this system, the Siege Engine system, you have primary attributes and secondary attributes. And that's important because the way the dice system works in this is that if it's a primary attribute that you're using to do a check, whether it be in combat or picking a lock or pushing over a stone or whatever. If it's a primary attribute, your starting goal number to roll is going to be a 12. The castle keeper can add an additional difficulty level from 0 to 10, maybe even negative, depending on how easy it actually is. So you start with a 12. The castle keeper adds a difficulty level, say, of 2 for it. So now your target number is a 14. And when you're rolling, you get to add your attribute bonus, whatever that is, along with your level, if it's a skill that your class possesses. If it's a skill that's in a different class, like if a wizard tries to pick a lock, he's at a double disadvantage, and I'll explain why. You don't get to add your level if it's not something that's in your wheelhouse. You can still make the attempt, but sometimes if you have a level 3 thief who has a +3 to their dex, which gives you a +6, and you got to roll an 18 or better to pick a specific lock because of the difficulty level, all that adds up. Now, if it's an ability or an attribute that's not a primary, you get 2 to 3 primaries, and the rest are all secondaries. If you're using a secondary skill, your starting number to hit is 18. So that just shows that if you're not good at something, it's definitely harder to accomplish the task. So that's the basics of the Siege Engine system. And they go into pretty good detail without going overboard on each character class. They give you the first 12 levels in a table here. And at first level, for instance, the barbarian gets all kinds of stuff. Combat sense, deer stalker, intimidate, and primeval instincts. And combat sense and deer stalker don't even take any checks. You just automatically can do them without rolling a die. Intimidate takes a constitution check. Primeval instincts takes no check. So that's pretty cool to start with. But the nice thing is this actually covers everything up to level 24. And here's the 13 to 24 list of things broken down. So you have all your classes. And in this one, in the order they have it, is classes, then race and or ancestry. I still call it race because I started playing before first edition. That's right, I'm old. All right, let's get past the classes. All right, and here's your races. There's the classic races: dwarf, elf, gnome, half-elf, halfling, half-orc, and human. No tieflings, no tabaxi, no kenku. None of that. Again, very first edition like. So, and it goes into all the things that the races have. Now, when I talked about the primary and the secondary attributes, humans get 3 primary and the other 3 are secondary. If you're anything other than human, you only get 2 to choose that are primary, and technically you only choose 1. Your class will choose what your first primary attribute is. So for instance, on the wizard, right here, primary attribute is intelligence, so that's already given. If you're playing a human, you can pick 2 more of your attributes to be primaries. But say if you're an elf, you only get to pick 1 more. Like I said, your class will give you 1, but because you are of a different ancestry or race, you already get some extras that cover that third primary choice. So right away, the elves, they get enhanced senses, twilight vision, move silently, spell resistance, spot hidden doors, and weapons training. So they get to pick 1 other attribute other than the class attribute to be a primary, because they get this extra stuff that humans do not get. And that goes for all the non-human races. All right. Then they go into the spells for illusionist and wizard, druid, and cleric. Illusionist and wizards are all arcane. Druid and cleric are divine magic. Pretty similar to what you already know. the difference between the illusionists from the old first edition is these illusionists can actually affect reality. It's not just a hologram that people can disbelieve. They can actually control reality. I would say they're closer to a sorcerer than an illusionist would be, or even a it could be a mage. It could be you could call it anything but an illusionist, because they don't do just illusions. And there's some back and forth in the Castles and Crusades worlds on whether or not people like them, or should they call them illusionists or call them a sorcerer, because their magic is innate. They don't have a spell book necessarily. But they're a lot more powerful than the classic first edition illusionists, which is kind of basically made holograms and both auditory and visual illusions. These can they can heal. Illusions can physically heal somebody because they can alter reality. So that's kind of up to you how you want to do that. So from there, here's all the spell lists. And after each of the spell lists for the particular spell slinger, then it goes into the description. So the spell lists are alphabetical due to class, so cleric, druid, on down. But the spell descriptions themselves are all just alphabetical, regardless of which school of magic they fall into. So, nice long section on spells. And then we go to the next section, which is the siege engine. And I should say also back here is a whole thing on equipment, but all the let's see, races, character, magic, spells. Oh, maybe equipment's back here. Hang on. Well, anyway, the siege engine, that goes into the rules of play that I described, the basics of doing a check or a combat attack of some kind. Let's see what else. So a lot of this back stuff here is for the castle keeper. Combat actions, combat turns, situational modifiers. So a lot of this is for the castle keeper himself. All right. The binding is really good. Looks very sturdy. So where did they do with the equipment? I know it's in here. My own personal quest now. All right. Figured it'd be like right after the races. Interesting. Well, there's always this. I'm kind of curious what the equipment looks like. I actually haven't looked at this particular printing, and I know they mixed some things up and changed a couple things here and there. All right, equipment 102. It's not very long, that's why. All right, equipment. All right, so helms, armor, shields, weapons. A lot of games don't include helms. They just have armor in general. I like the helm thing because you could wear a different type of helm than you would the armor you're wearing. Missile weapons, transport and tack, general equipment. Very nice. Okay, so that's the player's guide. Let's take a quick look at this printing edition of the Castle Keeper's Guide. So the Castle Keeper's Guide, it basically goes into more detail of everything that's in the player's guide. Because one of the things that I like about the system, especially if you're buying hardback books, which are expensive, the player's handbook and the monsters and treasure are the only two books you actually need to play. You do not need the Castle Keeper's Guide. It is more for whoever's running the game to do a deep dive in world building, how to make dungeons, cities, and things like that. So this is on magic, and this is how you can do more detailed magic use, buying and selling of, if there's holy ground or anything that affects the magic outside the caster themselves. Gives you some room and board ideas, gives you some transportation vehicles so you know exactly what you're talking about when you're talking about a coach, a carriage, or a wagon. Also the ships, different types of ships, so you know exactly what you're talking about when you're doing naval adventures. More on NPCs, gives you a list of types and types you can hire hirelings, much like first edition, and how much they charge per day. Here's some non-player characters that you can populate your cities with. So that's really nice because this is what helps you set up your game. But again, you do not need this to play the game because all your rules are in the players and the monsters and treasure books. So world building, here's a thing on cities and the people who could be in your cities in case, because sometimes it's hard to come up with a variation other than tavern keeper, blacksmith, and whoever runs the stable. All right, here's stuff on dungeons, air and water adventures, wastage for equipment, even land is treasure, which again, first edition, one of the things you used to do was try to acquire enough gold to build a keep and have a base of operations. All right, more deep dive on the monsters. Advancing your game. Let's see what else. More on treasure. Creating new spells, for instance. Silvering a weapon. Kind of niche, but often handy. All right. Iron and sulfur combat. So we're talking like, let's see here, iron and sulfur. Oh, line of sight, damage, range combat, damage reduction, massive piercing damage. So a lot of this you can also, it covers like mass warfare, not just individual melee combat. Here's some stuff on the characters, like a giant fighter type character, elven heritage advantages, gnome heritage advantages. So more details and more things you can add to your races. All right, character death, disease, mind infection, severe infection, very cool. All right, so that is the Castle Keeper's Guide. The latest printing will be a little different, but it's pretty much everything is going to be covered. This, just like I said, some language changes, some spelling errors corrected. And last but not least, monsters and treasure. Be interesting to see if they have artwork for each monster, like they did in the original monster manual. All right, expanding experience points, the introduction. So here you go. Here's starting A to Z. So you have this abhorrent, which looks a lot like an aboleth, but since aboleth, I believe, was an OGL thing, they changed the name. And that's going to happen both in the player's book with some spells. It's going to have a different name than it did before. Same thing with some of the monsters that were, the names themselves were copyrighted by Wizards of the Coast, so you can't use them, much like Beholder, obviously aboleth. But some of them, since they're from world mythology, you cannot copyright them, like kobold or elf or dwarf or centaur and things like that. All right, so the artwork varies because many artists were commissioned to put all these books together, so the artwork is different throughout it. Okay, for instance, on that whole OGL thing, here you have the, obviously, it's a carrion crawler, but can't call it that now. It's now a cadaver caterpillar, which works just as well. Okay. So this is basically a monster manual, and then, as you see here, and what it is for the color coding, when you get to each letter, like that's when the colors change slightly. So here's P, and then Q, a little lighter, and then R, and it gets lighter and lighter as you go down to Z. And then after that, you have your treasure. So you have magic items, cursed items, how to use magic items, who can use magic items, sentient magic items, and I think they give you, yeah, they give you tables that you can roll on to figure out what it is they find in your dungeon. But then they also have pre-made ones like Holy Avenger, Dragon Slayer, Mace of Banishment. And with those, I believe, yeah, they give you an actual stuff that's pre-made. They give you the description of what it does. All right. So that's the Monster and Treasures book. Well, I'm extremely satisfied with this, especially with these 3 copies of the player's book. So everybody at the table, or most everybody at the table, can have one, so they don't have to keep handing it back and forth when everybody wants to look up something at once. So I'd advise you to check it out. Trollord Games is a fantastic company. Everything's made here and printed locally to them. But check out this bundle if you want to get going on Castles and Crusades, which I highly recommend. All right, there you go. Pleasantly surprised here. They sent a lot more than I thought they would. But if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. I will put the links to everything Trollord Games in the description. And until we speak again, may you always roll with advantage.